The morning Damien Ashford came back to the estate, the sky was the color of old pewter, and the trees had already given up their leaves. November in upstate New York does not ease you in. It arrives like a fact. His car pulled through the iron gates at 7:43 in the morning. Black SUV, tinted windows, no announcement. There never was. The driver had learned, over 4 years of working for this man, that you do not make small talk. You drive. You carry nothing unless asked. You do not comment on the fact that they have driven 6 hours through the night, because Damien Ashford does not sleep on planes or in cars, and he does not explain this to anyone. Inside the house, something shifted before he even reached the door. That is the only way to describe it. A shift. The estate manager, a careful man named Victor, who had run the property for 11 years, was halfway through his morning checklist when he felt it, some animal thing at the base of his spine, and set his clipboard down. He straightened his jacket. He did not know why. In the kitchen, one of the cleaning staff looked up from the dishes she was washing and looked at the door. Just looked at it, for no reason she could name. The 2 men near the main staircase, both hired through a security contractor to walk the grounds at night, stood up straighter without communicating it to each other. Like they'd been pulled by the same string. The dog, a 10-year-old golden retriever named Toast, who belonged to Edith, and who had, in Victor's professional observation, never once in his life obeyed a command he didn't feel like obeying, sat down. Damien came through the front door. He did not announce himself. He did not say good morning. He pulled off his coat with one hand, gave the room a single sweep with his eyes, registered every person in it the way a man registers furniture, and the room responded the only way it knew how. It bowed. Not literally. Nobody bent at the waist, but Victor took 3 steps toward him. The 2 men near the stairs turned to face him fully. The woman in the kitchen, who could not even see through the wall between them, turned the faucet off. Even the air in the room did something with itself. Collected, reorganized. 31 years old. Built like someone who had at some point decided the body was a tool and then used it accordingly. A face that would have been devastating if it had ever learned to arrange itself into something warmer than focused. He had his grandmother's cheekbones and his father's jaw, and neither of them would have recognized themselves in the way he carried both. His eyes swept the room and stopped. In the far corner of the foyer, half behind the standing coat rack, a girl was on her knees on the hardwood floor, scrubbing the baseboard with a stiff brush. Headphones in. Back to the room. She had not straightened, she had not turned, she had not done the thing every single other person in this room had done without being asked. And she wasn't doing it now either, because she did not know he was there, because she was listening to something, because whatever was in those headphones was apparently more interesting than the arrival of the man who owned the building she was currently cleaning. Damien Ashford stood in the doorway of his grandmother's estate, surrounded by people who had recalibrated every molecule in their bodies to accommodate him, and he looked at the back of a girl in a faded green sweatshirt who was scrubbing a baseboard, and something happened. It was not a large thing. It was not a lightning bolt or a revelation. It was small and quiet, and it happened somewhere below his ribs, and it had no name yet. He looked at Victor. Victor, whose entire professional self was currently vibrating with the effort of being appropriately available. "My grandmother," Damien said. "3rd floor, sir. She's awake. She's been awake since 5. He nodded once, moved toward the stairs. He did not look at the girl again. He told himself, Edith Ashford was 91 years old and had, by her own accounting, earned the right to be honest about everything. She had been married for 53 years to a man who built things. She had raised 3 children in this house, watched them leave, watched them become complicated versions of the people she had hoped they might be, and made peace with the gap between those 2 things. She had buried a husband, a son-in-law, a best friend of 40 years, and a dog she had loved more than several of her relatives. She had survived a stroke at 83 that the doctors described as significant and that she described as inconvenient. She was in a wheelchair now. She did not like the wheelchair, but she liked falling less. When Damien came through her door, she was in the chair by the window, with a book face down in her lap and her reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she looked at him, the way she always looked at him, like she was reading something slightly beneath the surface of his face. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine." "That's not what I said." He sat in the chair across from her. The room smelled like lavender and old wood and something faintly medicinal that he did not comment on. He had been in this room 1,000 times. It felt the same and different in the way that rooms feel when someone you love is smaller inside them than they used to be. "How are you?" he said. "Old," she said. "But I woke up this morning and the light was very beautiful, so I can't complain." He looked at the window. The light was gray and thin and doing nothing in particular. "It gets better around noon," she said, reading him without appearing to. "You'll see." They sat. This was one of the things about Edith. She did not fill silence with noise. She let it be. Damien had learned this from her, or thought he had, although his silences had somewhere along the way picked up an edge that hers did not have. "Who's new on the staff?" he said. "Victor hired some people. Ask Victor. There's a girl. Headphones. In the foyer." Edith looked at him. It was a very particular kind of look, the kind that does not show anything on the surface but that you feel in the back of your neck. "That's Nora," she said. "She's been here 4 months. Very thorough. What's she listening to?" "I have no idea." A pause. "Why don't you ask her?" He looked at the window. Edith looked at her book. Neither of them said anything for a while, and the silence had a shape to it that Edith recognized and did not point out. Her name was Nora Vasquez, and she had been awake since 4:30. Not because of anything dramatic. She was just a person who woke up early. Her body had been doing it since she was a teenager, working the opening shift at a bakery before school. And even now, years later and in a different life than that one, her eyes opened at 4:30, like something internal had set an alarm. She was 26. She had come to this job through an agency, one of 6 people who maintained the estate on a rotating schedule, and she had been assigned the interior cleaning, floors, baseboards, windows, the particular dust that collected in old houses in places that no one ever thought to check. She was good at the job. She had always been good at whatever job she was doing, which was a quality she had never known whether to be proud of or sad about. She had a mother, dialysis, 3 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. She had a brother, 17, smart in ways that needed more room than their neighborhood gave him. She had, at some point in the last 3 years, made a decision to stop thinking about the shape of the life she had wanted and to get very good at being useful inside the life she had. She did not think of this as giving up. She thought of it as being a grown person. Some days this felt right. Some days it felt like something she was still trying to convince herself of. The audiobooks helped. She put them on, and her hands did their work, and some other part of her brain traveled. Through the deep ocean, through geological time, through the migration patterns of whale sharks. She had studied marine biology for 2 years at a state school before the money ran out. She still thought about it the way some people think about a person they used to love and have mostly stopped being angry at. She was mid-chapter, something about bioluminescence in deep trench organisms, the way creatures with no access to sunlight had invented their own light, when she felt the room change. She did not hear anything. She felt it, some shift in air pressure or attention, or something she did not have a precise word for. The way you can feel someone looking at you across a crowded room even when your back is turned. She finished the section of baseboard she was working on, gave it 2 more passes with the brush, sat back on her heels, pulled one earbud out, turned her head. There was a man standing in the foyer. Not Victor, not the security guys, not anyone she had seen before. He was looking at her with an expression she could not quite categorize. Not rude, not warm, just very attentive, in the way that people are attentive to things they are trying to understand. She looked at him the way she looked at everything new, evenly, with no particular performance attached to it. "Can I help you?" she said. "No," he said. She put her earbud back in and turned back to the baseboard. She heard him walk up the stairs. She went back to the bioluminescent creatures at the bottom of the ocean and thought nothing more about it. Or almost nothing. There was a small thing, like a pebble dropped into still water, that she did not look at directly. She went back to work. He stayed. That was the first surprise. He had told Victor 5 days. This was not negotiable, Victor understood. There were calls, there were things. The company did not run itself, and Damien Ashford had spent the last 11 years making sure it could not run without him, which was a particular kind of trap he had set for himself, and which he was aware of, and which he had never addressed. Day 5 came. He made a call, pushed 2 meetings, delegated a thing he had never once delegated in the history of his company to a man named Garrett, who had been waiting 4 years to be trusted with exactly this kind of thing. He did not examine why. He went to the kitchen for coffee on the morning of day 6 and found it already made, and Nora wiping down the countertop with the focused energy of someone who is several tasks into their morning and has a system. She did not look up when he came in. He poured his coffee. She moved from the counter to the stovetop. He stood at the kitchen island and watched this, and then looked at his phone, and then drank his coffee. "You're the owner's grandson," she said. "Not a question." "Yes." Victor told everyone, after you arrived. She moved to the window above the sink. He wanted to make sure nobody said anything inappropriate. Did he succeed? She considered this. Mostly. He looked at the back of her head. Her hair was in a bun, the practical kind, held with one of those claw clips that women apparently choose for function, and not because they look the way they look. "What are you listening to?" he said. She pulled one earbud out. "Right now, nothing." "What did you say? What do you listen to? When you're working?" "Audiobooks." "What kind?" She looked at him then. Straight on, which was not something people usually did with him this fast. "Science, mostly. Marine biology. Right now, deep sea stuff." He did not know what he had expected her to say. "Not that. Why marine biology?" She turned back to the window. "Why not?" It was not an evasion. It was a complete answer. He understood this, and did not push it, and this, the fact of not pushing it, which was not something he did with anyone about anything, was the second small surprise. He finished his coffee. He left. He came back the next morning, and the morning after that. The estate had its rhythms, and Nora learned them fast, which was how she learned everything. Victor ran a tight schedule. The security staff rotated at 6 and at 6. Edith was up at 5, and downstairs by 10, in her chair by the window in the sitting room, where the light came in at an angle that was apparently important to her. Nora had learned to leave that room for last. Edith was good company. This was not something Nora had expected. She had worked in other houses, not many, but a few, and the families were either absent or overly present in the uncomfortable way where they watched you work and felt the need to justify themselves to you, explain how busy they were, why they needed help. Edith did neither. She did not apologize for needing things done, and she did not pretend she was someone without needs. She was interested in Nora, not in the performing interest way, in the actual way, where the questions were specific and the listening was real, and she remembered what you said the last time. She asked about the audiobooks. Nora told her about the marine biology, abbreviated, the way she always abbreviated it, leaving out the part about the 2 years of school, because the leaving out had become a reflex. Edith asked what specifically. Nora told her about bioluminescence. Edith said that the deep ocean had always struck her as proof that beauty didn't need an audience. It just kept doing its thing regardless. Nora had thought about that for 3 days. She was thinking about it now, actually, on her knees in the upstairs hallway running a cloth along the baseboard, when she heard footsteps on the stairs that were not Victor's and not the security guy's and were not Edith's slow rolling sound. She knew the sound of his footsteps now. She did not examine how quickly she had learned them. He stopped at the top of the stairs. She could feel him there the way she had felt him in the foyer on the first morning, some pressure of attention that was different from other people's attention, more specific. She did not look up. "Victor's looking for you," she said. "I know. He's been looking for you for about 20 minutes. I know that too." She sat back on her heels and looked up at him. He was in dark clothes again. He was always in dark clothes, she had noticed, not because he was trying to look any particular way, but because he seemed to own mostly dark things. He had his sleeves pushed up. He was carrying a cup of coffee that he wasn't drinking. "Did you need something?" she said. "No." She looked at him for another second. Then she went back to the baseboard. He stayed there for a moment. Then he left. Victor found him in the library. The thing about Damien Ashford was that he had been useful for so long that he had stopped being able to locate himself when usefulness was not immediately available. His company moved. People relied on it. He knew, at any given moment, where every significant thread was, and what tension it was under, and what would happen if it snapped. This knowledge was not a burden. It was the scaffolding that held the rest of him up. Remove it, and there was a question underneath that he had spent a long time not looking at. Here, there was nothing for him to run. Victor ran the estate. The nurses managed his grandmother's medical needs with a quiet competence that did not require him. The security staff had their systems. He was, in this house, functionless. He sat with this in the library on the afternoon of the 8th day, in a chair that was older than his company, surrounded by books he had mostly read in this same chair as a teenager, and tried to locate something that wasn't discomfort. The door opened. Nora came in with a cloth and a spray bottle and stopped when she saw him. "I can come back," she said. "No." He moved his coffee cup off the side table. "Do what you need to do." She looked at the room the way she looked at all rooms, taking a quick inventory, planning the route. Then she started on the shelves on the far wall. He watched her. She pulled a book partway out, dusted the spine, slid it back in, moved to the next one. "Do you read?" she said, not looking at him. "Yes." "What?" "History, mostly. Military history, some economics." She nodded like this confirmed something. "What does that mean?" he said. "What does what mean?" "That nod." She glanced at him. "You like to understand systems, why things happen the way they happen, what the mechanism is." He looked at her. "Most people who read military history aren't interested in the battles," she said, going back to the shelves. "They're interested in why the battles had to happen, all the conditions that made them inevitable." He was quiet for a moment. "And you read ocean biology," he said. "For the same reason." She moved along the shelf. He watched this. He was supposed to be on a call in 40 minutes. He had completely forgotten this until just now. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You've been asking me things every day for a week," she said. "I don't see why you'd stop now." This was true, and she said it completely without hostility, which somehow made it land harder than if she'd been rude about it. "Why this?" he said. "Why this job?" She was quiet for a beat. 2. She moved a stack of books, dusted beneath them, replaced them with the same precision she did everything with. "My mother needs a specific kind of medical care 3 times a week," she said. "My brother is 17 and smart enough that if the money is there when he applies to university, it makes a difference." She set a book back in its place. "The hours here are good, the work is straightforward, I'm reliable, so Victor keeps the schedule consistent." She said this the way you say things you have said to yourself many times, not rehearsed, exactly, but settled, a thing that has been turned over until its edges are smooth. "What were you doing before this?" he said. She looked at him then. That direct look. "Different things," she said. He understood that she was done with that line of questioning. He could not have told you how he knew this. She had not changed her tone, had not put any wall in her voice. It was something smaller than that. A slight reorientation. He changed direction. "My grandmother likes you," he said. Something moved across her face, small and genuine. "I like her. That's not common. Most people find her alarming. She's honest. People find honest alarming." She moved to the next section of shelves. "I find it restful." He sat with this. Outside the light was going gray, and early the way it does in November, when the afternoon decides it is already evening. The library was warm. The clock on the mantel made its sound. He missed his call. He did not notice until 40 minutes later. Edith noticed things. She had noticed by the end of Damien's first week that he had started taking a route through the East Corridor in the mornings that added approximately 3 minutes to the walk between his bedroom and the kitchen, and that this route happened to pass through the main hallway where Nora usually started her day. She noticed that he had started going to the library in the afternoons, which he had not done since he was 16, and hiding from a family summer that had too many people in it. She noticed that he had stopped checking his phone every 4 minutes, with the low-grade vigilance of a man who believes the world will come apart if he looks away. He still checked it, but the interval had stretched. She said nothing about any of this to Damien. She said some things to Nora. It was a Tuesday, the 3rd week. Nora was in the sitting room. She'd saved it for last, as she always did, and she was dusting the windowsill that Edith wasn't occupying, and Edith was in her chair with her book, and they were talking the way they usually talked, in and around the work, without it being a thing. "Tell me how you really ended up studying marine biology," Edith said. Nora looked at her. "I told you. You told me the short version. I want the real one." Nora put her cloth down. She knew Edith well enough by now to know that arguing with this request was a waste of both their time. "I grew up near the water," she said. "Not on it, not rich near it. Just, you could see it from the hill behind our neighborhood. I used to go up there and sit and watch it. I had this idea that whatever the ocean was doing, whatever was happening in it, it was just going on. Not for anyone. Not for any reason. Just happening because that was what it did." She looked at the window. "I found that very comforting when I was a kid. The idea that something that big was just going ahead and doing its thing regardless of what was happening to me." Edith said nothing. "So when I was choosing what to study," Nora said, "it felt like the obvious thing, to understand the mechanism of the thing that had always seemed reliable to me." She picked up her cloth. "Then the money ran out. And you left. I made a decision, yes." Edith looked at her in that reading way of hers. "Do you miss it?" "Every day," Nora said. "But missing something and being destroyed by missing it are different things. I figured out the difference." Edith nodded slowly. "My husband was like that. He had wanted to be an architect. He became a businessman because his family needed it. He built a good business, but in the evenings he drew buildings that nobody ever saw." She paused. "He kept all the sketches, 341 of them. I still have them." Nora looked at her. "Wanting something and living well anyway are not opposites," Edith said. Despite what most people seem to believe. She went back to her book. Nora went back to the windowsill. After a while, Edith said, "What do you think of my grandson?" Nora kept her eyes on what she was doing. "He's very serious. He didn't used to be." Edith turned a page. "He used to laugh at things. He had a very good laugh, loud, like it surprised him." Nora did not say anything. "It went away when he built the company," Edith said. "He decided, I think, that Sirius was more trustworthy than happy, that people would believe him more if he appeared to have no needs." She paused. "Which is the kind of decision that makes a great deal of sense in a boardroom and very little sense in a life." The clock on the mantel made its sound. "He's been here longer than he planned," Nora said carefully. "Yes," Edith said, "he has." She did not say anything else. She did not need to. It was the 3rd week, a Thursday, 2 in the morning, when the thing happened that Damien would later, not to anyone, only to himself, in the very private accounting he did sometimes late at night, mark as the real beginning. He could not sleep. This was not unusual. He went to the kitchen to make tea he did not actually want, which was a thing he did when his brain refused to stop moving. The ritual of the kettle and the cup and the waiting gave his hands something to do, while his mind did its pointless laps. He pushed the kitchen door open. Nora was at the kitchen table. She had a large book open in front of her, not an audio book, an actual physical book, the old kind with the broken spine that meant it had been read many times. A cup of coffee at her elbow, a small lamp on the counter throwing a circle of light over the table. She was not reading with any particular urgency. She was reading like someone who is reading because they love the thing they are reading. She looked up when he came in. She was not startled. She had heard him on the stairs again. She had memorized his footsteps without deciding to, the same way you memorize the sound of rain on a specific window. "There's water in the kettle," she said. "I just boiled it." He looked at her for a second. Then he went to the kettle. He made his tea. He brought it to the table. He sat down across from her. She went back to her book. He did not take out his phone. He sat and drank his tea and looked at nothing in particular, and the kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of a page turning every few minutes. It was the most comfortable he had felt in this house in years. He did not examine this. After a while, maybe 30 minutes, maybe more, he had genuinely stopped tracking the time, which almost never happened to him. She set the book down and picked up her coffee cup and looked at him. "Can't sleep?" she said. "No." "Does that happen a lot?" "Yes." She nodded, not sympathetically, just receiving the information. "Why did you build the company?" she said. He looked at her. "You can read about that. There are interviews." "I know. I read 2 of them." She looked at her coffee cup. "You give the same answer every time. It's a very good answer. It's also not the real one." He was quiet. The refrigerator made its quiet hum. Outside the window, the wind moved through the bare trees. "My father died when I was 22, he said. This was not in any interview. He was not a man who could take care of himself or anyone else. He was charming, and he was unreliable, and he spent most of my childhood being someone we could not count on. He looked at the table. When he died, what I felt was, not grief, exactly, something more like fury. At the waste of it, at all the years I had spent hoping he would become a different person." He paused. "I built the company because I needed to be the opposite of that. I needed to be someone that no situation could unrequire. I needed to be necessary." He had never said this out loud. To anyone. He did not know why he had said it to her. Nora was quiet for a moment. She was not looking at him with the expression people usually got when he said something vulnerable, the expression that was half discomfort and half the performance of being touched. She was just listening, receiving it. The way she listened to everything, fully, without making it into something about herself. "That makes sense," she said. "That was all. That was it." He sat there, and the thing that happened in his chest was not a large thing. It was small and quiet, and he did not name it. But it was there, and he felt it, and it stayed. "What made you come back here?" she said. "Not just because of your grandmother. You could have sent someone, hired someone. You have enough people." "I know. So why?" He thought about this honestly, which was something he did not often do about himself. "I think I needed to be somewhere that I existed before I decided to be only useful." He looked at his hands around the teacup. "My grandmother is one of 3 people in my life who knew me before I was this. And the other 2? One is my oldest friend, who lives in Toronto and who I see twice a year if we're lucky. And one is dead." Nora looked at him. Just looked. "I'm sorry," she said. Not in the reflex way. In the way that means, I received that, and I am not going to move past it too fast. "It was a long time ago," he said. "That doesn't always matter." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." They sat. The clock somewhere in the house made its 2:30 sound, soft and far away. "You should sleep," she said eventually. "You should too." "I will. I have one more chapter." She touched the spine of the book. "It's about the creatures in the deepest part of the ocean. The ones that have never seen light, and so they made their own." She said this with a quiet, uncomplicated wonder that he found. He didn't have the right word for it. Disarming was close, like something she hadn't calculated before she said it. He finished his tea. He stood. He stood there for a second too long, which was not something he did. He was a person who always knew exactly how long to stay, and exactly when to leave. The calculus of it was automatic. It was not automatic now. "Good night," he said. "Good night," she said, and turned her page. He went upstairs. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling for a long time. And then, without deciding to, he fell asleep. He left on a Monday. He had now been here 3 weeks. He had pushed and rearranged and delegated until the professional structure of his life was showing cracks that he knew he could not ignore. Garrett had done well with the thing Damien had trusted him with, which was good, and also meant that Damien had to go back and deal with the fact that he had spent 3 weeks half absent from his own company, which was not nothing. He said goodbye to his grandmother on Sunday evening. Edith held his hand. She held it for a long time and looked at him the way she always looked at him, reading the thing below the surface of his face. "Don't be an idiot, Damien," she said. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I'll be back in a month," he said. She said. Which was not agreement. He went to bed. He lay awake. He got up at 5 in the morning, and the car was coming at 6, and he walked through the house in the dark, the way you walk through a place you are leaving, with the particular attention you don't pay when you think you're coming back. He stopped in the doorway of the sitting room. Nora was there. Not because she started this early. She didn't usually start until 7. She was in her coat, which meant she had arrived early, which meant she had known he was leaving today, which Victor had mentioned to the staff, and she had come early. She was standing at the window with her back to him. She had no headphones in. He stood in the doorway. She did not turn around, but she was not pretending not to know he was there. He could tell from the quality of her stillness that she was very aware of him. He understood, with the particular clarity of 6 in the morning with no sleep, that she was giving him the choice. She was standing there and not turning around, and that was the offer. If you want to make this into something, turn me around. If you don't, walk past and get in your car. He stood. He thought about the company and the calls and the 3 weeks he had already let run long and the structural reality of his life, which had no room in it for anything that was not the company, and he thought about Garrett, who was good, and he thought about his grandmother saying don't be an idiot without explaining what she meant, and he thought about a kitchen at 2 in the morning and a page turning in the quiet and being understood without being managed, and he thought about creatures at the bottom of the ocean who had no access to sunlight and so had learned to make their own. He walked past the doorway. He got in the car. They pulled out through the iron gates at 6:03. He made it 40 minutes down the highway. Then he said to the driver, "Turn around." The driver, who had learned over 4 years not to ask questions, turned around. He came through the front door at 6:52. Victor was at the foot of the stairs. His aunt was on the landing. The 2 security guys in the hallway. The cleaning woman from the kitchen who had come out at the sound of the car. Every single person in that foyer turned toward him. That automatic, inexplicable calibration that always happened when he entered a room. The way a room reorganizes itself around the thing it decides is the center. He looked past all of it. Nora was in the foyer. She had not gone back to work. She was standing near the coat rack, not exactly waiting, not pacing, just standing, in her coat, with her hands in the front pocket of her sweatshirt, and she was looking at him. She had heard the car come back. She had waited. He crossed the foyer. "I have no idea how to do this," he said. She looked at him. That direct, even look that gave nothing away except that it was hiding very little. "I know," she said. "That's fine." Behind him, the room full of people, Victor and the security guys and the cleaning woman and his aunt on the landing, stood in a foyer and watched Damien Ashford, who ran 400 people across 7 countries, and who had spent 11 years constructing a version of himself that needed nothing and apologized for nothing, stand in front of a girl in a faded green sweatshirt and look exactly like a man who has just been given permission to not have all the answers. Nobody said anything. At the top of the stairs, Edith Ashford sat in her wheelchair. She had heard the car come back. She had waited too. She had known, in the way she had always known things about this boy she had watched grow into this complicated man, that he would. She looked at the 2 of them in the foyer below. She did not say anything. She picked up her book. The light, at 7 in the morning, was beginning to come in through the eastern windows, thin and pale and still finding itself. But there. Definitely there. She had told Nora it was beautiful around noon. She had not mentioned that the early light was worth seeing too. She thought about her husband's 341 sketches of buildings that no one else had ever seen, and the way he had laughed when she'd found them, not embarrassed but surprised. Surprised that the private wanting of a thing was still legible after all that time, still there in the paper, still as clear and as real as the first day he had drawn it. She thought about creatures at the bottom of the ocean who had made their own light. She turned a page. Below, in the foyer, nothing dramatic was happening. No one was crying, no speeches. Just 2 people standing close together in the early morning, finding their footing inside something that neither of them had seen coming, and neither of them was walking away from anymore. The clock on the mantel made its sound. The house settled around them, old and warm, and full of the particular patience of places that have watched a great many things begin.